Okay, so my name is Mariah Dean. Tonight I'm going to focus on holiday plant care with a focus on paperwhites. So just a little background, I work for the University of Maryland Extension. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator. And we are under the University of Maryland Extension, which is part of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, which is part of the University of Maryland. So that's how that all ties in. In the Master Gardener program, we do a lot of different things. We do Ask Master Gardener plant clinics, which is just like if you have a gardening question, we can help answer that. We have the Grow It, Eat It program, which teaches people about growing their own food so they can eat their own food. We have the Baywise program, which is a program that is all about gardening and landscaping in ways that are friendly, or at least not as destructive as other ways of gardening and landscaping to the bay. We also have pollinator programs where we teach people about pollinators. We have composting programs where we teach people about composting and do demos. And we also do native plant demos and education. So holidays. Okay, so the holidays, like lots of cheer. How better to spread cheer than with plants? Some of the ways you can do this are to tour a beautiful garden like Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania, which is pictured, part of it is pictured to the right. And this year you can do virtual tours, which is really nice. And some of your loved ones may enjoy a houseplant or a holiday plant, which are often houseplants. Most of these are going to be kept inside, pretty much all of them, except you can put some of them outside in the summer. Or maybe you want to gift yourself a holiday plant as a little holiday gift. Okay, so first plant that I'm going to talk about tonight is poinsettias. So they're in the Euphorbia family or the spurge family. And as such, they have like this like milky sap that if it gets on your hands, it can be a little irritating. It can cause like itchiness or a little rash. Also, if your pets eat this, it can upset their stomachs. It's toxic. It's rarely deadly, but it's still a good idea if you have animals to keep these away from them. One cool thing is all those colorful parts of the plant, which you may think are flower petals, are actually not flower petals. They are flower bracts, and bracts are just modified leaves. In this case, the purpose of the bracts is to kind of say like, hey, pollinators, come here, so that the pollinators can get to the smaller actual flowers, which you can see on the little diagram on the right-hand side. These plants are native to Mexico. They're like wildflowers there. I did this presentation for a garden group, and someone was telling me about how they went to Mexico one time and they saw them growing all over, like it was really beautiful, like near a waterfall and all around it. And I was like, well, did you get pictures? She's like, no. I was like, okay, well, if you go back after all of this, please get pictures. I would love to see that. So if anybody has pictures, please send, that'd be lovely. And they get the common name poinsettia after Joel Roberts Poinsett, who was, he was a American physician, United States physician, and a diplomat. And he was one of the first to go to South America as a United States diplomat. And he also was the co-founder of the predecessor of the Smithsonian. So I thought that was cool. And there are now over 100 varieties of poinsettia since they have become so popularized here. They used to be kind of hard to find, like it was kind of like only one or two nurseries out in like California grew them, but now they're just all over. They have like a big boom since the 90s. So poinsettias need about 6 hours or more of bright and direct light. If you saw my presentation last week, they do really well in a western sunlight exposure. You want to try to keep these from drafts or from touching things like cold windows. They don't like that. You should water when the soil is dry. Like if you stick your finger in the side of the pot and you get down to about the second knuckle and it's dry, give them a drink. And then if the pot feels light, that's another sign that you need to give them a good drink. And try not to water the leaves or anything. Just water the soil like under the leaves. And one cool thing about these is that you can keep them past the holidays. It requires commitment and knowledge, and you can find more about that at the New Mexico University website. I'll send this presentation out so you can access that link. I could do a whole other presentation with a focus on keeping poinsettias past the holidays. But another way that you can keep them past the holidays that isn't the same plant is to just take cuttings of each plant. You see on the picture on the right, that's a leaf cutting. And so you would cut like 4 to 6 inches of a stem and then take off the bottom like 3 leaves and then dip the bottom like 1/2 inch to 1 inch in a rooting hormone and then put that in some soil, preferably light soil like vermiculite or even perlite. Peat would be good. Just water that and it'll sprout new roots, and you can plant that as a whole separate new plant. And that's a really good way to keep poinsettias going, and it should help keep them real bushy. From my experience, when I've kept them more than a year or two, they start getting kind of leggy and they don't look as good. But if you do the cutting method as a way to keep the same plant going, they end up looking a little bit better. So the next plant is Norfolk Island pines. These are a slow-growing tabletop tree, often sold decorated as Christmas trees. They do well in bright, indirect light. You can try adding a tray with pebbles underneath for extra humidity to mimic their natural habitat. So if you're like me, I had to Google where Norfolk Island was. It's near New Zealand. It's a South Pacific island. So their natural habitat is coastal, which tends to be pretty humid. But you want to be careful not to overwater these. They don't like wet feet. Keep them a little bit on the dry side, but not like bone dry. And they're not actually a member of the pine family, but they're a member of the Araucaria family, which is like a prehistoric family. There's about 41 members of this family left, and they're typically all in the southern hemisphere, like New Zealand, Australia, that region of the world. And in their native habitat, they can reach up to 200 feet tall. You can see the picture on like the top right is a picture of a mature Norfolk Island pine in a New Zealand park that is so tall the people standing next to it look like ants. I'm not sure exactly how tall that tree is, but yeah, that's how big they get in their native habitat. So I didn't want to focus just on Christmas because I know there's other holidays. I should have maybe I could have done something on growing kale. So if you wanted black-eyed peas and greens for New Year's, that would be good. You can still go kale outside if you have like a cold frame, or something like that to keep it warm. But one thing, for those who are Jewish, you can grow parsley and other herbs for Seder. So many herbs will grow well indoors if you give them a sunny spot. One of my favorite spots is like if you have a sunny spot over a kitchen sink, like a kitchen window, they do really well there. You want to make sure you have them in a well-draining container. It looks like in this picture they have them in terracotta pots, which is awesome. You want to make sure you keep your herbs well watered. So those are some good options for holiday plants that you may not have thought of. Like I said, if you want to do beans and greens for New Year's, you could grow kale outside in the cold frame. I don't know about black-eyed peas growing too well in January though, or December. Okay, so rosemary, they're a pretty plant with fragrant edible leaves. Sometimes people decorate them as Christmas trees. If you grow this inside as like a centerpiece for your table, but then you also take some sprigs for seasoning food with, remember the 1/3 rule, which is you can safely prune 1/3 of a plant without it dying unless the plant already has health issues. So just remember that. They need bright as light as you can get them pretty much. Water them when they're really dry, not like bone dry, but pretty dry. They like it on the drier side. Different varieties have different hardiness zones, and a lot of people think like, oh, rosemary, like I can grow it inside in the winter and then plant it outside in the spring and then it'll grow forever. But a lot of varieties that are sold as tabletop like decorations for holidays don't actually survive our winters here. So if you want to plant one that grows well outdoors in our planting zone, I recommend ARP. There's a couple other varieties that will grow well here, but that one grows particularly well here. So next is holiday cactuses. So there's actually 3 different types of holiday cactuses. You have the Thanksgiving cactus on the left, and you can tell the 3 different types apart by their leaves. So you can see the Thanksgiving cactus on the left has like pointy regions and a pointier top, kind of like cat ears. And then the Christmas cactus has smoother edges, but it still has some distinct edges. And then the Easter cactus doesn't really have that much edges. It's kind of really round. There's many different cultivars and flower variations of each. You can see at the bottom, there's so many different colors, different shapes of the flowers. Thanksgiving cactus is the most common. It blooms up to 8 weeks if properly cared for. So it makes sense if you start seeing them around like Thanksgiving and then like 2 weeks before even. And then if you keep them, they should bloom until like mid-January. So those are the ones that are going to bloom typically what you're going to see blooming through our holiday seasons. And, oh, you can see on the top right, that's what they get like when they get really big. That's a brilliant pink flowered specimen blooming in the D.C. Smith Conservatory on the University of Wisconsin Madison campus. And these plants also can live so long. My grandmother has one that was her mom's. So these things live like 70 plus years. These are kind of like heirloom plants. Like there's something you can pass on to your grandkids or great grandkids. And if you do the like propagate new plants from each plant indefinitely, I'm not sure what the longest going one is, but they last a long time. So the next plant is Amaryllis. So these are really pretty. They have all sorts of different flowers as well. They can live up to 75 years, which is really cool. So when you plant them, you want to plant them in a well-draining pot, just like everything else, with well-draining soil. And you want to leave about 1/3 of the bulb, like of the top of the bulb, exposed to air. And whatever pot you choose, you want it to be about 1 inch wider than the widest part of the bulb and twice as tall as the bulb. So lots of different options there, and sometimes they can get kind of top heavy and flop over. So if you just put like a little bamboo stake or some other support system to help them up, then they won't flop over. So there's a lot of other bulbs that you can grow inside, and growing bulbs inside outside of like the normal growing time that we think of, like spring and summer and fall, doing that inside is called forcing bulbs. And each bulb has different requirements if you want to force it. So a lot of them require a chilling period. And the easiest way to do this is to just put them in a paper bag and put them in your fridge. Some are harder to force than others. But this chart on the right is just kind of like the list of common names of the different plants. You can see there's some of the most common ones you can think of, and how many weeks of cold they need, like how many weeks you need to put them in your fridge. And you can see Amaryllis is not on here, even though it's a bulb, because it doesn't need this. That you can just put in your garage or a basement, somewhere that's like 40 to 50 degrees, and then that's all the chill it really needs. It needs more of a dormancy than a chill, and you want to do that in like late summer, early fall, so that way once it starts waking up from its dormancy, it'll be ready to bloom for the holidays. And you just leave it out in your garage or your basement or wherever is dark and cool, and just water it very, very sparingly. And then once you start seeing some new growth, that's when you bring it out of its dormancy area and start giving it more water and light and all of that. But all these other bulbs require a lot more care, and that's a whole other presentation to go into forcing each different type. But another type of bulb that you may notice on this list that doesn't require any weeks of cold are the paperwhites. So that's what this presentation is focusing on. So paperwhites, they have really pretty, like white, dainty flowers. They're fragrant. Some people like the fragrance and some people don't like them. Somebody said they smell like baby wipes. I don't know. It's personal preference. There are also some varieties that are not fragrant. So keep an eye out. Just kind of whenever you're shopping, just check for those varieties that aren't fragrant. So these are hardy to zone 8 to 11, so they won't grow well outdoors here in our planting zone. So if you grow them inside in the winter and you're like, okay, they're done blooming, I'm gonna plant them outside and then they'll bloom in the spring. No, they won't do that. They don't survive our winters here. So they're best grown inside. And like all the other holiday plants, they provide some cheer. They're really easy to grow. There's 2 main methods for planting them. So the first method is in water. You want to select a container with no drainage holes. Personally, I love the idea of a clear one because I like just nerding out about plants and watching the roots grow and things like that. And if you choose a clear container, you can watch the roots grow, which is pretty cool. You can pick your pebbles, have fun. You can see in this picture on the right, there's like river rocks in the back. Looks like some colorful beads on the front right. On the left, there's Legos. The Legos are a little bit iffy because you don't want the corners to like poke the bulbs and damage them. But if you very carefully put them in there, that should be fine. Only the bottom half of the bulb needs to be covered with pebbles, so you don't have to like really bury them in there. You want to be careful not to overwater paperwhites. When you're planting them, this is a really good example on the right. You really just want the gravel or pebbles or whatever you use to just kind of anchor the bulbs. And when you water, you want the water level to be to the roots, but no higher, because higher, if the bulbs just sit in water, they're going to rot. But if you don't have the water to where the roots can get them, the plants aren't going to get watered. So you want to have that water level right at that sweet spot. And it looks nice. And then, okay, so the second method, besides doing the grow and water method, is with soil in a well-draining container. So pick a pretty container with drainage holes. Well-draining container is always good for container plants. Well-draining soil is also usually a good rule of thumb for container plants. The size pot you could go for is like 6 to 8 inches in diameter and about 4 to 6 inches deep. That works pretty well. You can go a little bit shallower if you want. And you want to pack that with like as many bulbs as you can. You can always do bigger, smaller pots as well. The 6 to 8 inch diameter is kind of like a nice size for a centerpiece or tabletop. You could do larger if you wanted, or you could do smaller, just like maybe a couple. And when you plant them, you want to leave about 3/4 of an inch in between each bulb when you plant them. And the planting depth is important. You want to cover most of the bulb with soil, and you want to make sure that you leave the tip out and plant them, orient them properly in the soil so that the tip grows up and the tip is up and the roots are down. And you want to make sure you leave the tip out so that it doesn't rot. And placement is also important for these. So they don't need much light before they have any visible growth. But once they start getting some green growth, you want to give them the brightest light that you can before the bloom. And then once they start blooming, you can give them a little bit less light, like bright and direct light will work. It will actually help them bloom a little bit longer. And of course, you want to place them somewhere nice where you can enjoy them for their holiday stay. Somewhere with good light, minimal drafts, somewhere your animals won't chew on them. You can, in this picture, there's some like evergreens kind of around the bottom. You do something like that. Wherever you like, wherever you would enjoy them. And this was something interesting I saw. It has a long title for this slide, but sharing a holiday toast with your paperwhites can help them be less leggy. So researchers at Cornell discovered that adding just enough alcohol at the right time to paperwhites can help stunt their growth just enough so they aren't as leggy. So you can see on the top right picture, the plant on the left is kind of leggy and they're more likely to like flop over at that time. But the plant on the right, they treated with this alcohol method and it's a more compact growth. And it's just the way that the plant absorbs water and everything, so that it just keeps it compact. So the method to this is that you start the bulbs in plain water. And when you see root development and about 1 to 2 inches of green growth, pour out that plain water and add the alcohol mixture. So you can use like just rubbing alcohol or like quote unquote hard liquor. You don't want to do like beer or wine because it has too much sugar and that could cause like fungal growth or what, probably wouldn't smell good. I don't know. but you want to use rubbing alcohol or like something with over 40% alcohol, like gin or vodka. And you want to use 1 part of that to 7 parts of water. And then you just keep watering with that. And you don't want to overwater, and you don't want to add like too much alcohol, like, haha, I'm really going to compact the growth. Like, don't do that. The 1 to 7 is the rule of thumb here. And just this presentation is a little bit shorter than my other ones. It's about 30 minutes. Nearing the end here. But just as a kind of PSA, avoid a holiday disaster. A lot of our houseplants aren't good for animals, and I don't know why animals always go for them. I guess they just look so fun, and we enjoy the plants. You know, animals enjoy stuff through other senses than sight, like taste. So they see these plants, they just want to chew on them. So please don't, like, if you bring some of the plants inside, just keep them out of reach as much as you can from your pets. And keep an eye on your plants to see if there's any pet damage, like if there's any bite marks or anything. If you have cats, I really don't recommend Easter lilies. They're highly toxic. And like I said, poinsettias can cause some digestive upset. So just kind of keep an eye. They can coexist, but just got to be done with some supervision. And check the ASPCA site for more information on which plants are toxic to dogs, cats, and horses. And another fun thing is, if you don't want to go out and buy everybody gifts, you can propagate them some of your houseplants or other, like holiday specific plants. Like I said, the holiday cactuses are pretty easy to propagate. Sometimes those little, like the ends of the leaves, the sections will just fall off. And if you just let those sit for like 2 or 3 days and then put it in like perlite, vermiculite, peat moss, even, regular, like maybe seed starting mix, a light soil, and then like keep them moist, but not soggy. Then they'll start growing roots in like 2 or 3 weeks, and then you can give those out as plants. Say, oh, I wanted to share my love of houseplants with you, so I'm giving you part of my plant. And that can be really fun. Like if you have a friend who's like, oh my gosh, like if the last couple years they've really been admiring your pink flowering Christmas cactus, you can give them a piece, and it won't hurt your plant. Like I said, a lot of times they'll drop these. You let them sit for a couple days. Same with like jades, they'll drop leaves, and then you can just repot them. And some other ways to propagate holiday plants are Amaryllis. They said they live up to 75 years, and after several years they'll start growing little bulbs around the base, so then you can just pull those off and plant those separately and then give them to your friends, or just have like a whole display for yourself, whatever. And rosemary, you can do like stem cuttings, same with poinsettias, like I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of ways to spread holiday cheer. Like if you only have, you bought yourself a plant a while ago, or you already bought someone a bunch of stuff, or whatever the reason, you can grow plants, and it's kind of like baking cookies. Like it's from the heart. So that's a really nice way to spread some holiday cheer. And if you don't like growing houseplants and you just don't want to grow any, you can always try greens. You can get some reeds. If you want to make some, there's lots of good videos out there. Make sure you select healthy greens. Evergreens should be looking pretty good this time of year. Sometimes In the summer, they can be yellowing and have leaf drop from drought, or in the fall, they always seem to be yellow. But right now they're doing well, so you can go out and prune some of your trees and make some pretty wreaths from them. So that's it for this presentation. Thank you so much. If you have any more, and if you have any questions, I'll be here for a little bit, and you can ask questions in the chat. And if you have any other questions, just feel free to contact me. There's my email. Sometimes I might get stumped, so I might not get the answer right away, but I will get you the answer. And if you're interested in just like learning more about plants, the University of Maryland Extension website, in particular the Home and Garden Information Center website, has like a library of articles that you can just scroll through for like hours, learning about all different plants and compost and all different sorts of horticulture. And we also have the Maryland Grows blog. We recently created a Facebook for St. Mary's County Master Gardeners. And we'll have some other local programs. And yeah, so we're excited. Or I didn't really cite the sources, I just put links. A lot of them are just to the pictures.